Ironically, the book launch I'd spent months planning had to be postponed, but in another sense, the message of that book had never been more alive. Hey friends, less than 48 hours after my brand new book arrived in the mail, after months of writing and weeks of editing, weeks of waiting, and less than 48 hours after that, my brother-in-law died. Tragedy happened on my way to the book launch. I pushed print and it was going to be delivered, and I was so excited because it was going to be delivered between Monday and Thursday. And on Thursday, my husband was hosting a birthday party for me, and it was going to be a time of a soft book launch at that birthday party where I was going to have a friend, Mary, interview me. I was going to read a section of it, and I did. And as a party favor, I gave everybody a book to take home. It was so much fun. The next night, my parents took us out for dinner to celebrate my birthday. My brothers and their spouses and we had a great time. And that Saturday was going to be filled with doing all the things that one does when one releases a book. But we got a call around noon saying that my brother-in-law was rushed to the hospital. He'd had sudden chest pain onset at the golf course, and it looked really bad. We were beside ourselves. It was an hour and a half later that we got the call saying that he had died. And to be perfectly candid, the launch suddenly didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. I didn't care about it. First things first, family was important. And the book launch got put on hold. Our family, man, we were in shock. We could hardly believe it. Just didn't seem real. We packed our bags, we booked flights, and we made arrangements to travel to be with family. What made this extraordinarily difficult was that Jim, my husband, had two brothers and a set of parents. And in February, his mother died from Alzheimer's. It was a death that felt welcome after a fall and some fractures, and she was in a lot of pain and didn't understand. And we were grateful when she could be at rest. It was less than 3 weeks later that very suddenly her husband, Jim's father in his late 80s, passed away. And we went back just a few weeks later to have services for him. And these three boys were suddenly orphans and had a whole bunch of stuff to figure out without their parents in this world. And now just a couple of months later, the oldest brother, he died. It was crazy to get that news. Our family, we were in shock. It was utter disbelief. It just seemed too much, and it took the wind out of Jim's sails. It was so hard. He left on Tuesday, and I left the next day. He has 4 kids still at home, 5 kids total. He meant so much to his workplace and to his friends, to the organizations that he was a part of and supported. We spent the next days helping plan a funeral. We went through the eulogy, we went to his office, we sorted through all the details that people shouldn't have to face. It wasn't the launch week that I imagined, but it was pretty powerful. Something happened during those days that I don't think I'll ever forget. For years, I've been studying loneliness. I've worked with people on loneliness as a therapist. I've listened to hundreds of stories of people who feel unseen, disconnected, or alone. I've spent years trying to understand attachment, belonging, trauma, neuroscience, and what Scripture says about the way that God has designed us for a relationship. I speak in my church about connection at the junction of theology and psychology. That's a place I love to be. And then I wrote this book about it. One thing to write about connection, it's an entirely different thing to watch it unfold in real life. My brother-in-law loved Jesus. And if there was one thing that became unmistakably clear during those days, it was that he had lived a life of connection. At the university where he worked, colleagues spoke about the way he encouraged people, made them feel valued, the way he mentored students. When we went to his office to pick up a few things for a memory table, there was flowers and candles and a sign and a picture set up outside the door. He was so clearly loved by the people there. We got hugged in such important ways when we went there to spend a few minutes in his office. Organizations that he volunteered with described him as somebody who quietly showed up, who served faithfully, kept meetings running on time, and he made communities stronger. Friends told stories that we had never heard before. And his kids, they gave such powerful stories of memories about a father who was present, a father who had poured into his kids' lives, who had just made the world a better place with not only his kids, but his kids' friends who would come over for pool parties, for food, for watching movie nights, who were mentored by him. For some who needed a dad, and he was a dad-like figure to them. His family experienced a husband, a dad, a brother, an uncle who made people feel like they belonged. Again and again, I heard the same theme. People weren't remembering him for what he accomplished, although he had accomplished a lot. They remember how they felt when they were with him. And that stayed with me, because that's really what this book is about. We live in a world that celebrates achievement, independence, productivity, and success. And Ken was very successful. He was on staff as a professor at the university. Yet underneath all of that accomplishment is something much deeper and so much more important. Every one of us carries a longing for belonging. And that longing isn't evidence that there's something wrong with us. It's actually evidence that there's something profoundly right with us, because God designed us for connection with God and with one another. And loneliness isn't just about having people around us. It's about being known and welcomed, valued, and invited in to become more fully ourselves in the presence of others. And I watched hundreds of people gather to honor my brother-in-law. It wasn't just a funeral. It was like visible, tangible evidence of a life spent investing in people, in relationships. Connection, it leaves a legacy. And the remarkable thing is that no one talked about him trying to build a legacy. They just talked about the ordinary moments when he went camping, or in the backyard in the pool, or around the dinner table, about at the board meeting, in the classroom, the conversations, the encouragement, the kindness, the faithfulness, the willingness to notice people, not just the ones in the center, but the ones at the edge who needed welcoming in. The quiet ways he reflected Jesus. That's the Jesus way of belonging. Jesus had this way of making people feel seen. He noticed the person everyone else overlooked. And he welcomed people before he corrected them. He saw them first. He built tables to sit and eat at instead of walls to separate people. Jesus created belonging that transformed lives by the way he related to people. And as I stood there grieving someone that we all loved, I realized I wasn't simply watching the ending of a life. I was seeing what happens when someone spends decades living the way Jesus did, because the ripple effects were everywhere. Ironically, the book launch I'd spent months planning had to be postponed, but in another sense, the message of that book had never been more alive. It wasn't an academic exercise sitting at a desk writing. It wasn't a collection of research studies. It wasn't a clever idea that I was trying to capture. It was embodied in a real person whose absence left an enormous hole. Precisely because his presence had meant so much to so many. If there's one thing these last weeks have reminded me, it's this. The relationships we build are never wasted. Every conversation matters. Every act of kindness matters. Every person we make feel seen matters. Because one day, what people will remember most isn't just what we achieved. They will remember how we loved. And maybe that's why God placing a longing for belonging inside of every human heart is because we were never merely meant to somehow get through life. We were created to help one another feel at home. And in a silly, superficial, almost feels like it doesn't matter more anyway, that's what I'm hoping that this book does. Not because it has all the answers, but because what I've tried to do in that book is to point to the one who showed us what belonging looks like, what belonging feels like. The one who was really good at belonging has taught the ones who love him to figure out what belonging looks like. And so I'm still grieving the death of my brother-in-law. And I ache for those kids and their friends, and for his colleagues and his students who are trying to figure out what it looks like to live in this world without him, but who have these memories of how he created a sense of belonging through his hospitality, through seeing the people that needed to be seen. And I'm sad for him. And I'm excited to continue doing the kind of work that he would have wanted the rest of us to do, to create the challenge and invitation to say, you belong, you matter. And once you know that you matter, and once you feel the blessing and the grace and the mercy, it just becomes so natural to do that for other people. I think that's all I got for today. Take care, friend.